Hello, my name is Andrew Macklin. I'm an actor, qualified career coach working in the arts, cultural and media sectors, helping creators develop their careers, practice and work. And we're here for another creative career talk. This time I'm joined by the wonderful Richie O'Sullivan with the wonderful Star Wars poster. Richie is currently the festival administrator at Dublin Theatre Festival. He's also a freelance producer. He's previously toured the world as a company manager with renowned Druid Theatre. Also worked as a company manager, stage manager, project manager, arts administrator with some of Ireland's leading theatre organisations, including the Abbey, Gate, Fishamble, Rough Magic. I'm sure there's many more than that, Richie, as well. And in 2017, you graduated from UCD with a Master's in Cultural Policy and Arts Management. That's a mouthful of a CV to throw in there. How are you doing, Richie? Whereabouts in the world are you?
I'm in Dublin. Good, Andrew, and good. I'm in Dublin, so I'm currently we're level 5 and working from home again. So, and all the challenges and fun that brings. So, I'm good. Thanks a million for having me on. It's great.
Yeah, grand. I love now that introductions involve what tier level you're in.
Yeah.
Richie from Dublin, tier 3. Richie, listen, reading out that and looking at what you've done over the years that you've been working, it gave me the impression that there's lots of things and areas you could have gone into work in, presumably with, that level of management skills and know-how and administration and so on and so forth. So, what for you was the signal that brought you towards theatre and arts particularly?
For me, it happened completely by accident. It was a complete fluke. I graduated from college in 2007 with a degree in accountancy, which halfway through the degree, I realized I didn't want to use. It didn't interest me as much as I thought it would. I kind of spent a couple of years after I graduated kind of wandering a little bit. I was a pensions administrator for a couple of years, and at that stage, I wanted to be a teacher, and trying to get in to be a teacher was just so hard at that point because the crash was happening. So anyone who was working in business was trying to go and do the HDIP and being a secondary school teacher. And then, so it was really hard to get into. So that kind of led me to, I had applied 2 years in a row and I didn't get it. So at that stage, I was kind of going, I just don't know what I want to do. And I had been involved for a long time with youth theatre. I was in Clondalkin Youth Theatre from when I was a teenager, and the Youth Theatre Ireland, they are now, they were NAID then, had their arts train course, which was a full-time drama facilitation course, which was brilliant. And I kind of thought, well, I like drama. I want to be a teacher. I kind of saw it as a stepping stone. And then I had kind of gone, well, yeah, I'll go and I'll give this a go and I'll do a year of this. And then after this, towards the end of the year, I'll apply to do the HDIP and go back and see if that kind of makes any difference. And it was just the more I kind of did it, the more involved I had now left the youth theatre in Clondalkin, and I was now back involved in kind of helping to run things. And towards the end of the year on Arts Train, they were producing the National Youth Theatre show that year in the Peacock, which was a dream play, which Jimmy Fay was directing. And every year that when they did the MYT, then the assistant stage manager was somebody from the Arts Train course. And I had kind of thrown my name in and gone, look, I'm really interested in doing this. It would be really good. I think it would be fun. Like, kind of any chance I could do it. And kind of where it started, and that's where I kind of stage managed my first gig, and out of that I met people like John Stapleton in the Abbey who gave me my first job in the Abbey the following year, which kind of kicked everything off then for me. And that was the turning point. The MYT, I kind of look back on it now as being the moment that really turned it around, where I kind of went, oh, maybe I could actually do this as a job. Like maybe there is kind of something I can do. And I did, but I kind of felt that, like, I never regretted doing the accountancy degree, just because it kind of gave me a good grounding in kind of the business management side of that and the organizational side of that. And I kind of carried that through a bit. So that's where kind of I accidentally stumbled into being a stage manager. So
That's really mad to hear. I mean, because for a lot of people, it's like, oh, there's a single moment where they're like, oh, they see a thing or a thing happens, and they're like, well, that's it for me. That's the thing. I think it's always interesting to hear that how differently it works, and actually it can be a slow process of just not knowing exactly where you're going down little routes that seem somewhat attractive, and then it feels like you've been buffeted around in different
yeah.
directions. Uh, and so so at the NYT then, and you got this stage management thing, what was in that? I know you said that there was like people at the Abbey kind of saying, look, stay on, that's your first gig, we can do others. But was there anything in that stage managing that you were like, yeah, this feels like home to me. This feels like something I really want to get. What were the kind of characteristics of that job, that place and time that you were like, I want more of this?
I think that, like, there was a few different things in it. There was the kind of the buzz of doing the show and being backstage in a show. I'd really love being in youth theatre, and I'd really love being on stage, but I never ever, I never wanted to be an actor. I was kind of like, I couldn't do that. I would like, just that end of it wasn't for me. And then, but I think because I was organized, and because, I'm a great believer in the Excel spreadsheet and all this kind of like, and that kind of, that fed into, that was kind of, that came from college as well. And that fed into that side of the job where it's like, well, I am organized. I do enjoy that kind of organizational skills. There's the creative challenges of being an ASM, of getting props or making props, and some of it at the time was definitely was on the hoof, and you learn as you go, and that for me carried through for a couple of years. That I was always, every new show was a challenge, because I never went to college to study stage management. There was elements of it starting out as an ASM where I was like, I don't know what's involved in making a book. I don't know what's involved in what the DSM does, or the company manager, or anything like that. So every job was like being in college, because everything was learning as you go. And I had some great teachers as well. Like, there was some brilliant, I've worked with some amazing stage managers over the years who, like, I did my first show in the Abbey where Tara Furlong was the DSM, and she really kind of, I did, like, my first 4 or 5 shows in the Abbey were all with Tara, and everything I was learning from her, and she was teaching me things. And people like Anne Kyle and Paula Tierney, and who I've worked with over the years, who kind of all are so brilliant at what they do, and you kind of look at them and go, I really like that, or I really, the way they do their book is really nice. And like that kind of, the organizational side of things really interested me, as well as kind of, I'm a very people person, so being backstage, I think is really good. And I can kind of think I'm calm, like I am calm under pressure. So being backstage and having a calm head backstage, you learn early on that that's what people need. And even if you are panicking, like, if there's people coming off stage and there's something going wrong, or there's people backstage and something going wrong, you need to have a calm head. And I think that I definitely learned that as I went. But yeah, so that's what kind of attracted me to it. And then, like I said, when I met John in the Abbey, and I had said, look, I'd really love to do this, and it was the following year. It was nearly a year before anything kind of came up. But I was bouncing around a bit in between, and at that point I was kind of going, geez, I don't even know if this is going to work, or, because it is hard out there when you're kind of, when between jobs, and you're gigging on things, on random things. I was doing stewarding work and stuff like that, and I was kind of at that point kind of going, geez, is this the right thing to do, or is this the right avenue to go down? And then John gave me a job in the Abbey, and then that was definitely the start of it, which was great.
I've never heard someone refer to Excel spreadsheets quite like a religion in the way that you do, but it sounds like it was a really good mix early on of like that organizational skills, like you say, with the meeting people and the sort of energy of being backstage, and it also sounds like what's interesting, I guess, is that you very much learned on the job. And I think a lot of people sort of would have the assumption maybe that that's not something that happens in the world, really, that, you know, I couldn't just jump into that position. I'd need to go and do a couple of years in a certain place. And of course, there's always courses and things, but to some degree, learning on the job is still something that happens quite a lot, I guess. So
Like one of the things that, like, you know, and it's that I learned from working in the Abbey, that every show, because every show is different. Like John rang me, they were doing Curse of the Starving Class on the main stage, and he rang me and he asked me how I was with sheep, because they were having a live lamb in the show, and as ASM, part of my job was looking after this lamb, which was going to live in the Abbey for a couple of weeks while we did the run in a pen upstairs. And so that, you know, it was that kind of thing. I went, right, okay, this is definitely, like, every show was different. Like I had, and you know yourself, in the Abbey, you cannot get down in the Abbey to the main stage in the lift. You have to go out onto the street and back in the stage door. So every night I had to go upstairs, get the lamb, put it on a lead, get in the lift, go down, out onto Abbey Street, back in the stage door. People didn't know what was going on. And, you know, it's, there is, and that was definitely when it twigged with me that, okay, every single show was going to be different, and you just have to be ready for anything that will get thrown your way, and then just learn as you go, and learn how to look after a sheep.
I mean, yeah, it says a lot. You're right from the perspective of every show being quite different. And it reminds me that maybe directors should be steered away from having live animals in shows. I mean, I've done some shows in the Abbey with dogs, and I think we all felt early on that these dogs aren't going to do exactly what the director imagined they would do, and nor did they, but they were great fun to have in the place as well. But I wonder, so when you started then, when you were then offered the job at the Abbey, and it feels like that was a real time of, yeah, I'm sort of being given this position now. Here's a few, you know, a stream of work I'll be having. What, if any, were your sort of aspirations at the time? When you stepped into that, were you thinking, was there an image in your head of where you thought this might be going?
Not really. It was, I know when I went in, and all of the shows I did in the Abbey over that 3 years were all show to show, all show by show basis. So I was always planning ahead on, and I did that as just over the course of my career as a stage manager. I was always 6 months ahead of where I knew I was going to be, and I was always trying to go, okay, well, I'm in a job now which is going to finish in 3 months. I have something there that's going to do 2 months. I need to now find, I don't want to be 2 weeks before the end of the last contract before I'm trying to find the next one. And I think it's just getting into that rhythm of looking ahead and keeping your network open, and talking to people and flagging with people that it is that you are available. That I think there's that perception, if you go in, like, full-time contracts, you know yourself, in the arts are very rare. So if you're in somewhere like the Abbey or the Gate, and you're there maybe on a show by show basis, but then people stop calling you because they go, oh, well, you work there, where you're kind of going, well, no, actually I'm still freelance, but I need to kind of you still need to be available for work, and still need to be on people's radars, so that, and I think that's just part of the networking thing that you have to do, and just so that you're still visible and still ready to kind of to go, well, okay, well, I am actually free in 6 months time, and that gig sounds great, or that tour sounds brilliant. And so I think that's a really important part of it, is just being the networking part of it, and just staying in touch.
And just with that, Richie, because I think a lot of this is something that comes up quite a lot, this idea of, you know, establishing a network and keeping in touch with a network and being visible to a degree. And I wonder, for people maybe who might be watching, who might be very new to the game, who might be stage managing somewhere very early on, I mean, what does that look like? This reaching out and being visible, what were the kind of practical steps that you would take, or that you would advise someone take?
I think it's just in that an introduction of, and maybe not an introduction of, here, gives a job, but to look at places that you want to work and go, okay, well, that's a company that really interests me. I'll make contact with whoever company manager is, general manager is, and say, look, this is me. This is what I'm interested in doing. If there's anything that comes up that you might keep me in mind, and that it's just getting on people's radars and they kind of go, okay, well, maybe there isn't something now, but in 6 months' time we actually do have something, or that it's not just about going and knocking on the door and saying, here, gives a job. That you're it kind of, it goes a bit deeper than that. And I think that is important in just kind of and figuring out who you want to work with. Some amazing companies out there, and it's where you might kind of go, well, actually the work that they do really interests me. And there's people out there who are doing brilliant work, and particularly in this year who have adapted really well to doing stuff online or doing stuff outside, and it's figuring out who do I want to work with, and making those contacts and making those connections. It mightn't pay off immediately, but I think in the long run there is the benefit to that, where you're making those connections and making those contacts. And I think it does work, because that's what happened for me. And through working with different people in different jobs, then later on down the line it comes back to you, because they might be working with a different company that needs an ASM or a DSM. They go, well, actually I know someone who's really good, and then they bring you in, and then you've a foot in the door somewhere else then. Because that's how it happened for me with Fishamble or with Druid, or that was through a connection of someone I had worked with somewhere else.
So there's, what I'm hearing there is this one sense of like seeking out the companies you really want to work with, and then as a knock-on effect of that, sometimes the people that you're working with in those companies move to other companies, and there's a sort of a cross-pollination that goes on. What would you say to as you were speaking, I could hear some other arguments that you might hear people saying in my ear around, well, look, they probably don't want to hear from me. Or, do you know what, it's such a saturated market. There's, the chances of them having a job when I ring, what would you say to, I guess a lot of people have those sort of voices in their heads kind of going, look, it's really hard and they probably don't want to hear from me and that kind of stuff. What would you say to those sort of ideas?
I think it's just to kind of to fight against that initial thing. There might be something where you need a job now and you're contacting people, and that's okay as well. I'm not saying for people not to do that, but I think if you're planning on playing the long game, I think the making the contacts and making the connections is important. I don't know if I answered your question there.
No, I think you made a nice distinction there between, by saying the long game, you imply that sort of, there could be a short game as well. So maybe the mentality that is more useful might be this long game one of, I'm here for a while, so I can afford to take my time in creating relationships, as opposed to the give me a job vibe that might just not result in you being liked too much. You were mentioning there about seeking out companies that you really like their work and want to be involved with, which sort of brings me to Druid Theatre. I know you've done a lot of work with Druid, and they do incredible work, but also incredible work internationally as well. So I know you've toured with them and been around. Tell us a little bit. I know you toured America. What was that like?
It was great. It was really good. Professionally, it was very good. Like we did. I got to go back and we did a 7-week tour of America. We did Washington, D.C., and we did the Chicago Shakespeare. And I know you were on tour at a similar time, doing similar venues. And we did Waiting for Godot, and that was such a brilliant production. And that was great. As company manager, to come back to that was amazing, because I was on the original incarnation of that as the deputy stage manager. And I loved that tour, and we did do unusual rural tours, and we got to do it in places like we did Godot outside on Inishmaan, which was just probably one of the most special shows that I've done, just because it was such an incredible experience, and I love the play and I love the company, and then to get to go back and do it as a tour was brilliant. And we toured for on and off for the guts of a year with that, and that was my year with Druid as company manager. And yeah, it's an incredible company to work with, and that was an incredible tour, and I really loved the work on that. Personally, for me at the time, that was a very challenging year. Jenny, my wife, was pregnant with our second child when I was away in America, so that brought its own level of stress and challenges while I was away that year. And I know I struggled a lot kind of mental health wise that year with anxiety and with stress and feeling very low at times. And I think it was one of those things where I didn't talk about it, and I kind of noticed that I was just internalizing everything. And because you're away on a tour and everybody's having a great time and you kind of think, Jesus, it's just me, or it's just, whereas touring is hard. And I don't know if it's talked about enough about how hard it is, the impact of being away from your people and living in hotels or living in apartments on your own. And there's just a whole set of challenges around being away. And I definitely found it that was definitely a challenge for me. And that kind of led to where I am now, because it got to the point towards the end of the year, it was like, I cannot do this anymore. I can't be away all the time. I need something a bit more 9 to 5. I've done the tours. I've done the hours for nearly 10 years of 6 weeks of rehearsal followed by 3 months of a run, by being back to being off, being back in rehearsal, back work. And even I'd done it for so long that it just got to a point where I was kind of going, I just can't do this anymore. It's too hard. And that was a very freeing experience, because making that decision to kind of go, I need to do something that has more regular hours, and I need to be at home, and I need to start prioritizing family over work. And yeah, so that was a turning point. That was a brilliant year, and I had some amazing experiences, and I went to some amazing places. Like, I mean, going to Chicago for a week and the music clubs and things like that. I've been in these brilliant places, but also there's always that thing in the background of, yes, it's amazing being away, but like Chicago came at the end of like a 7-week tour of being away. And I've kind of known at the time of kind of looking and going, okay, well, like Jenny is 30 something weeks pregnant, could go at any minute, and I need to like have a contingency of how I get home. And so that yeah, it was, I think touring in general, I think is just really hard. And I think it suits some people. I think it suits a lot of people love it, but for me, I had done it for long enough where I kind of thought, I just can't be away anymore. And and that's what it boiled down to. It was a very simple, once I'd kind of waded through all of the things that were stressing me out, it just came down to one thing, and that made the decision quite easy then. And as sad as I was to leave Druid and to not work with them anymore, as I've made some great friends working in there, it just got to a point where I kind of went, I just can't do it, and I have to look after myself. I have to look after the family. Like, I was not in a good headspace towards the end of the year, and it was kind of the first time I'd ever acknowledged it. It was the first time I'd ever gone to speak to somebody. It was the first time I'd kind of acknowledged that the toll that touring had taken on me personally over the years. And this wasn't just from this one tour or this 1 year. It came from years of being away and doing different things and missing different either family occasions because of not being home or things like that. You know, it just really, that's what it boiled down to for me. And as a career decision, it was a very easy decision, because I just can't, like, this aspect of the job doesn't suit me anymore, so I just have to move on. And that was kind of what happened.
I mean, hearing you say that, there's a real clear sense that there was something core that sort of shifted, like you said, that real sense of, look, this can't go on, so I need to make some real changes. And you were saying there that there was a sense of that career decision sort of made itself happen. But I think you're so right to say about, you know, the difficulties of being on tour. Just from being away, I mean, there's very few other jobs, I guess, unless you're working on oil plants offshore, where you are away for that amount of time. But I think there's something with it too that sort of is an odd thing when you're away for that amount. And I think the tour that I sort of was on recently was very similar in length to your own. Everyone was disappointed that I wasn't in Druid when I got to places in Chicago. Like, you must have been in Druid. No, I wasn't in Druid. But I think they sort of like are a little microcosm. They sort of give you an opportunity to look at your own sort of normal life in a better perspective because you're away from it. I found, at least. And so it was a real clear space of sort of allowing you to look at things a little bit differently because you're away from your normal life. And there's definitely, when I came back, decisions I was like, oh, there's some stuff I could do without actually. And there's other stuff I'm more interested in. And somehow it gave me that time and space that you wouldn't normally have to some degree. And so just with that then, there was a clear sense, obviously, when you came back that, look, things need to change. And this part of my life, the way in which I've been working, I want to shift and move on. Practically then, when you came back, what were some of the kind of set in stone core things that you were doing? What were the sort of, I guess, next steps or actions you took as a result of this, that you're like, right, I'm going to do this next, and then I'm going to do that, and I'm going to set things up this way? What were the next things to happen?
It was kind of like the next thing to happen was to try and find something new and something. Kind of naively kind of thought, oh, grand, cool, I've loads of experience, I'll get a job, no problem. And it was 6-7 months before I found something else, and that was when I got the job at Dublin Theatre Festival. And over the course of that time, it is quite stressful, and it's like like job hunting is a full-time job, and you are like, it's like you're working on CVs and tailoring applications and then tailoring your CVs to a particular job, and it can be a bit of a demoralizing thing. It's a very competitive industry, and when there's a lot of people looking for jobs in very specialized areas. So it's just a case of how do you stand out and how do you, and it does get demoralizing. I was at a point right before I got the DTF job where I was done. Like, I had been applying for arts jobs, purely arts jobs, because I was like, well, this is what I've been doing, this is what I'm qualified in, this is what I have a master's in, this is what and I was applying for jobs, and I got to the point as well, like, I was applying for jobs that I didn't necessarily want, but I just needed a job. And there was one job in particular, and that was a bit of a kind of a moment for me, where I'd applied for an admin job, which I had kind of gone, I'm a bit overqualified for it, and I got a rejection saying we've gone with someone with more experience. And I kind of went, what do you have to do? Like, how, like, I'm at 10 years at this with a master's in the middle of it, like, and I did get to the point where I don't know if I can do this anymore, physically do it anymore, but like, because it just doesn't seem to, the jobs don't seem to be out there. And I was at the cusp of going, okay, well, that's me in the arts done. And that was when I had gotten the job with Dublin Theatre Festival, and I was delighted with that, because it meant that I could still, and that kind of the job at the moment kind of brought everything together, that I was, like, I had there's an element of finance in it, there's an admin element to it, there's a bit of a production element, working on that side of things a little bit as well. And so it kind of brought everything together over the last few years, which has been great. But yeah, I did that period of 6 to 7 months, and I knew at the time as well, I was like, I should enjoy this time because I'm off, because once I'm back working again, I'm going to go, God, like, would love to kind of have a bit more time at home, because you don't appreciate it when you're off. But when you're at that point where you're kind of like, I need to get a job, I need to work, and I need to find something quickly, you kind of don't really enjoy it as much as you probably should if you were just on holidays, or if you were just on a bit of a break. But yeah, that was that was it. It was an eye-opening 6 months as well, because it was looking at what was out there and what suited, and I was trying to I had kind of narrowed as well my field, in that I had those parameters of this job has to be regular hours, it has to be 9 to 5, it has to be Monday to Friday, which in the arts is not always possible. Mm-hmm. So I think it took that little bit longer because I was looking for a very particular job, rather than it just being a bit more kind of production based as all of the other ones had been.
And so there's this sort of 6-month period where, like anyone who's hunting for a job, it's, a real trial, and you're clearly coming to it with a lot of experience and a master's in there as well. So I can imagine the frustration of getting these, letters back saying we found somebody more experienced. I can get that. It feels like, from the way you talk about the current position that you're in at Dublin Theatre Festival, it's a very good fit. And it sounds like part of that is to do with the fact that you were quite specific about what you wanted. It needs to be 9 to 5, needs to be sort of, local to a degree. What then is your sort of, looking back on that period, that sort of 6 months that then ultimately led to you getting this really nicely fitting job, it sounds like. What's the sort of overall lesson for you from that? When you look back, what's the sort of, meaning you make of it?
I think it definitely got to the point where I was, and I look back now and I kind of go, it's not just about finding a job, it's about finding the right job. And I remember at the time someone saying to me, look, you have to kind of get something that suits, because what you'll do is, if you just take any job just for the money, you'll just end up back here in 6 months' time, and it's true. It is at that stage where you kind of go, well, if I hold out, or you can only hold out for so long as well. And I think that for me, I had given it 6-7 months. And for me, I was kind of hitting the end of that. Okay, well, now I need to expand my parameters more to maybe include non-arts jobs. And it is, it's one of those things where it's about finding the right job and the right fit. And I do think if you kind of hold out and if you do it strategically, that it is okay. Like, and going back to the thing I think of, we talked about earlier on, about who do you want to work for, and looking and talking to people, that I think it works that way as well, not just for production jobs, but also just making contact with people. And a friend of mine is a career coach, and she's always talking about, the hidden job market, that there are jobs that people need, but they haven't advertised, or and then when you go and you contact them, then that there is that element of oh yeah, no, we do have that job, and then now you're back on the radar again for a different reason. But I think trying to find the right job is important, and figuring out what I wanted to do and where I wanted to be, kind of career trajectory wise, after having been in production for so long. Kind of moving more into the admin side of things and the management side of things was definitely where I'd wanted to go, particularly after doing the masters as well, which was great. So I think that was definitely kind of a take home thing for me after that 6 months.
So it feels like the strategy there was a mixture of sort of moving from the give me a job to the I need a job with these specific parameters of time, also who I ideally want to work with, and what I want to be doing, essentially. And I love that thing you were mentioning around, I heard, I think there's a German word for it perhaps, but it's the spaces between spaces around finding those jobs that they're not the living room, but there's a job just under the stairs that actually fits you quite well. So there's always spaces between spaces. To bring us back to 2020 and I think post the good news that Trump is going to be leaving, but as a sort of, in your position at Dublin Theatre Festival in a pandemic year, I guess I've got two questions for you. One, what has been, and they're probably obvious, but maybe not to someone like myself, what have been the real challenges this year And then also what have been the real opportunities? Because some of the challenges I think are very different depending on who you talk to. And where organization they're in, they can be massively different. There are some people who have just not been affected massively from it and could easily put things on hold. Others have been completely, I know we were talking earlier about some other festivals that it landed just on the day in which they were opening, and that's a different kettle of fish. But also the opportunities in that, in some areas it's broadening out with Zoom and different things. So yeah, what for you have been the main challenges in your role this year, and what's your sense of what opportunities might come from this, if any?
I think for a lot of people, I think the challenge of just losing years of work has been really, really upsetting to see. You know, people who've developed projects for a couple of years and who were meant to tour this year, who were meant to perform, that shows being cancelled and shows being pulled. I think it's just been a really, really upsetting thing to see, and seeing so many friends who have lost projects or who've had to push projects out and have lost work. And I think, yeah, that's definitely been a hard thing to see for the industry this year. And I think like you talk about opportunities, I think the fact that there's been such an increase in funding for next year from the Arts Council, I think an unprecedented increase, I think that's going to provide some opportunities. I think I think it's thrown up some challenges this year. It's thrown up a lot of heartbreak for people, and I think for me, seeing how people have adapted to that has been inspiring as well, because you see how people have shifted to working online and producing stuff online or producing stuff outdoors. And you're looking at so many brilliant artists who've taken a project and gone, okay, well, this is how it was meant to happen, and they've realized it a different way, or they've realized a project in a way that maybe they'd never thought of before. And that, I think, in trying to grab a positive from this year, I think it is opening up kind of opportunities of doing stuff online. But I think people having the live theatre element, I know people miss. And like I'm looking forward to back being in a room watching a play.
I mean, it's really reassuring, I guess, to be reminded about the money that has been given to the arts, and to be reminded that there is going to be the potential there next year for more stuff, but also just to hear how artists have, as you said, realized their projects to a degree, and which must be so hard to do if you've been working on something for years with a really set idea of how it's going to be. And then for reality to shift so quickly, and for people to go, okay, that's what's happening now. I just got to look at this in a different lens and see how it looks online. Maybe not the ideal thing they were hoping for, but that is something that is being done and can be done. But yeah, I think you speak a lot to how much we've been reminded how important all of that Netflix culture stuff is, because I think that's what's getting us through a lot of COVID and second lockdown. Richie, thank you so much for taking time out on what is a morning time when I'm sure you're meant to be working. So thanks very much for taking the time out to chat to me.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks a million for having me, Andrew. It was great.